Hi everyone, this is Emily Leiphart here for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video I'm sharing a set of cards featuring 3 products from the Valentine's release, including the Gus Gertie Best Buds stamp set and coordinating dies, the Stitched with Love cutting plate, and Simple Strips in Reverse Love. The Gus Gertie stamp set is the 4th installment in the Gus Gertie collection, and it's a fun one. I love the 3 images of Gus the dog and his adorable little bird friend Gertie. There are 5 sentiments that you can mix and match with the images. There are matching dies for the images, and I love the way the dies cut out the space between Gus and the top bar of his bike, as well as the individual stars. I'll be sharing a trick on how to get those stars adhered to your card in the exact same configuration as the stamped image. The Stitched with Love cutting plate is so beautiful, and what I love about it most is that it doesn't have a cutting edge, which means you can use this plate in both the vertical and horizontal directions, and even expand it for slim line lengths. I'll be sharing a trick for that too. The final product I'm featuring is the Simple Strips in Reverse Love, which are pre-printed sentiments for the coordinating Simple Strips dies. These are super easy to use as is, but you can also use deco foil and a laminator to increase the wow factor of these sentiments. My color palette for this video includes Guava, Potato Chip, Cookie Monster, and Blue Corn. I'll only be using the Blue Corn and Cookie Monster inks, but I'll be using cardstock in all 4 of these colors. Here I've pre-cut the Stitched with Love cutting plate in several colors to show you how they look as A2 panels. This first sample is Cookie Monster on Blue Corn cardstock. The 2 blues look great together and would work nicely for a masculine Valentine's card. The Guava panel also looks great against the Blue Corn panel since it's a contrast between light and dark. If you wanted to, you could layer the 2 colors and slightly offset them to create 2-toned hearts. I even love the simplicity of Sugar Cube against a subtle Potato Chip panel, and even Sugar Cube against the Blue Corn panel. As you can see, there are so many possibilities, especially when you use the die-cut hearts to fill in the spaces, or even use colored strips or ink blending to create a colorful background. The gold foil hearts I've die cut here could be used inside a shaker on the front of the card or sparingly as accents. Here's an example of the Stitched with Love plate used in the horizontal layout, and yet another option is to leave the hearts in the panel for a different look. You could, of course, just place a regular die cut panel on a horizontal card, but the hearts wouldn't be in the right direction. A lot of companies create 2 separate plates for vertical and horizontal orientations, but that can get expensive, so let me show you how to do both with just 1 plate. I simply center my horizontal panel on the vertical plate, then place it on my cutting plate. You can use tape to hold it if you like, but I didn't feel like I needed to. When you place the top plate on top of the die, you don't want to cover the edge of the die or it'll leave a dent in your cardstock, even though there's no cutting edge. The frame of the die itself will make a mark in your cardstock, so what you want to do is leave the edge of the plate slightly off the edge of the die. Then simply run it through and you'll have a general fade away where the plate hasn't cut into the cardstock. Now, I love the way these partial die cuts look, and you can definitely use the panel like this. It also means you can stamp a sentiment cleanly on the side of the panel where it hasn't been die cut. To continue the pattern on the other half of the panel, I'm going to overlap some of the cutting plate with the die cut portion so the pattern literally locks in. This way it won't move and you know that it lines up perfectly. Again, I don't cover the edge of the die to avoid leaving a dent in the cardstock. When I remove the panel from the die cutting machine, just look how perfectly it looks like I used a horizontal version of this cutting plate. For one of my cards I'll be making a horizontal mini slim, so I'm going to show you how to use this cutting plate on a panel that measures 3 1/4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. I simply line it up as before, centering it from top to bottom and running it through, making sure that the cutting plate does not leave a dent in the cardstock where it stops 2/3 of the way across. In this case, I want to leave the panel like this with the fadeaway instead of continuing it all the way across. Now I'm going to stamp all 3 of the images using Blue Corn ink. I've been loving my images stamped with navy blue lately. It gives the images a richness that black doesn't. The images also look brighter somehow. Anyway, I love the way it looks, and I hope you'll give it a try to see if you like it too. I ink up each image twice to get a solid inking and use the Just Press tool to get even pressure on the MISTI lid. Now it's time to color the images, so I'm going to put on some music while I use Copic markers on these adorable images. After the coloring is done, I use wire snips to separate the dies and cut out the images. For my first card, I'm also going to use the Build-A-Scene Rolling Hills dies and the Stitched Circle Stacklets. It's easier to stamp the sentiment first so I can make sure it's centered on the circle. I'm using the sentiment that reads, "Thanks for being my ride or die," and stamping it with blue corn ink. I use the images to gauge the position of the sentiment before die cutting the stitched circle. I've die cut the rolling hills from potato chip, Cookie Monster, and blue corn cardstock, and I experiment with the order of the colors, making sure to choose the layering that looks best with the image. I use the same circle die to cut out each of the layers and attach them using Barely Art liquid glue. I also use the liquid glue to attach the Guava panel to the sugar cube card base, placing acrylic blocks on top for a minute while it sets. I cut a second die cut of the image and adhere the two layers for a bit of dimension. Before attaching the circle to the card, I insert 2 rows of the gold foil hearts along the top and bottom of the panel. Once again, I use liquid glue to attach the circle and check that it's straight using one of the alignment panels. Then I attach the image of Gus and Gertie using both liquid glue and some glue dots where there are thicker gaps between the image and the hill. On my second card, the gold element will be a foiled strip along the left edge of the panel. This card will feature the airplane, which I will pop up with foam tape. Initially, I was going to use one of the simple strips in reverse, but decided to stamp "You're Plain Awesome" using Cookie Monster and blue corn to coordinate with the image. I use washi tape to mask off the different words in order to get a multicolored sentiment. Then I use the mini strips backer die to cut out the sentiment and trim my own backer from blue corn cardstock. I glue the 2 layers together and pop it up on foam tape. Then I use the tiny hearts from the other 2 panels to add embellishments. For my third and final card, I once again used the stitched circle stacklets to create radiating light for the moon. I cut out different sizes from different colors before settling on potato chip, guava, and gold foil. Once again, I used liquid glue to adhere the layers together. While I allowed those layers to dry under a stack of acrylic blocks, I added another layer of the die-cut image, stars included. Using a vellum die cut of the image, I'll be able to adhere the stars to the background in the exact positions they are meant to be. When I use the jewel picker to place the stars on the glue, I simply push down while gently pulling up on the vellum so it doesn't get trapped under the edge of the die cut. The last star sits on the edge between circles, so I use micro glue dots on that side of the star to bridge the gap. After the circle is attached to the card, I use foam tape and a bit of glue on another one of the simple strips in reverse to secure it to the card. Here's a review of all 3 cards, which feature the same 4 colors by a combination of cardstock, ink, and Copic markers. They all also have an element of gold in different proportions and used in different ways. I hope you enjoyed all the tips and tricks in this video and that you're inspired to create with Gus and Gertie Best Buds, Stitched with Love, and Simple Strips in Reverse Love. You can find all of these products in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.